best of luck in the future. I would like to welcome Bailey Henson, Leadership Program Specialist for the Boys and Girls Club of Sarasota and DeSoto counties, and the STAR students in the audience today. Please stand to be recognized. STAR, which stands for Students Taking Active Roles, is a training program created to encourage youth to take active roles in their community. I would also like to invite the board members and superintendent to stay after the meeting today to meet the students for question and answer session. Thank you. And superintendent's report. Superintendent Connor, please.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. At this time, as we pull up the presentation, I want to thank you. It's hard to believe we are already in November, and we are headed towards the holiday season. And actually, this will be our last meeting before we get to the Thanksgiving time. So I just want to say thanks. Have a happy Thanksgiving to all. I know that's a little in advance, but I want to share a couple of things from our consent agenda that we'll be passing today. And the first one is the approval of our local articulation agreement with the State College of Florida. Through collaboration with the State College of Florida, we are able to provide at no cost to eligible students college credit through our dual enrollment program to help them earn their Associate of Science degrees and other certificates. So this is a great partnership that we have with our local college, and it's a cost savings to our families, and it provides accelerated pathways to our students. And so we're thankful for that partnership. Also on our consent agenda is the approval of the agreement between the Boys and Girls Club of Sarasota and DeSoto counties, and part of what we have today here with our STAR students. This agreement provides leadership opportunities and training for our high school students to develop their leadership skills. And so as a part of that, this group will get to hear a little bit about how the board operates and in other leadership capacities throughout the county. So we're thankful for this agreement, and thank you to the Boys and Girls Club for their partnership as well. I want to highlight a few news and achievements. So resulting from our marching band assessment, I'm proud to announce that Northport, Riverview, Sarasota, and Venice received straight superiors at the MPA event, and we had a great, fantastic night, and was exciting performances by all. And this makes 60 years straight superiors for Riverview High School. Congratulations. I want to recognize Mark Arnold, who is one of our SROs, who was awarded the School-Based Difference Maker at the annual Inglewood Community Coalition annual dinner. So thank you, Mark Arnold, for all that you do and for the kids at Inglewood Elementary. Booker High School had a creative event. The film and animation students recently had the opportunity to participate in the Shimcor Studios master classes and met actors, writers, and producer and director Dillig McDermott. And that was a great experience. And the Creative Empowerment Program is focused on providing talented creators with access to recognized artists and industry experts. So that was, thanks to that partnership, we were able to bring in a fantastic producer, actor, and director. We want to recognize our Sarasota Middle School counselor who was named the 2024 Florida School Counselor of the Year to Dr. Carmen Larson. Let's give her a round of applause. She is representing the state of Florida, and she's right here in our very own backyard at Sarasota Middle School. Thank you so much for all that you do. Just want to recognize that we do, beginning this week, it is Holocaust Education Week. We do celebrate that in Florida. It's held annually on the second week of November. And the Commissioner's Task Force on Holocaust Education identifies resources that help our educators in structuring lessons that will be provided throughout our K-12 classrooms throughout this week. And Veterans Day, we can't forget, even though it is on a Saturday this year, that we are celebrating our veterans, and most of our schools will be having many events across our district in celebration of Veterans Day, and we thank our veterans for what they've done, and we thank our schools for taking the time to celebrate them throughout this week. And recently, last week, I sent out a communication, and it's posted on our website regarding a survey. So I have had the fortunate opportunity, I believe this is day 81 work days that I've been on the job. So we're getting close to that 100 days, that I've been out and about. I've been meeting so many people. I've met so many groups, focus groups of administrators, of teachers, of students. We have been out with parents and community members, foundation support, business partners. We've held listen and learn tours face-to-face, 10 of those sessions. We had virtual sessions for those who couldn't be face-to-face. And I didn't want to miss the opportunity for anyone who did not have the ability to make one of those sessions to at least provide some input as I, again, assimilate and come into the district. 81 days has gone by really fast, and that's a good thing. It's just we're a lot to do, a lot to focus on, but I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to give me feedback in telling me what are the great things about our district that we need to continue and enhance here in Sarasota County. What are some areas of opportunity where we can improve and get better? And a couple of other questions that are in that survey. It's very short. I think it's 6 questions. And whether you're a student, a parent, a community member, a teacher, an administrator, whatever connection you have to Sarasota County Schools, you're invited. We have 1 week left on that survey, and you can go to our district website and it's on our homepage. So please take advantage of that. And that is all for me, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Connor. Next, we will go to hearing of citizens. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. When the timer flashes yellow, 1 minute remains, and you need to begin to summarize. You must stop speaking when the buzzer rings. Please note that respect for divergent viewpoints and civility will be shown at every board meeting. Whether you agree or disagree with a speaker, you should listen politely and respectfully without making any sounds of approval or disapproval, including clapping. I recognize there is a lot of passion and emotion with the decisions that come before this board and the impact they have on our students, families, staff, and community. As such, I believe it is important that we afford the opportunity for every speaker to be heard. To my fellow board members, any comments during hearing of citizens that you would like to respond to will take place at the conclusion of public comment. My request is that when you respond, you keep it to the issues that have been brought forward and refrain from directing it to any individual of the public. Per state statute 1001.3723, anyone causing a disruption will first be given a warning, and if the conduct does not stop, you will be removed from the chambers. I'd like to call up Richard Canarelli, please, followed by Leela Newcomb and Patrick Eaton.
Good afternoon, and thank you. My name is Richard Canarelli, and I appreciate this opportunity to give my opinion on a couple of important matters. First of all, I wish to go on the record as being opposed to the redistricting proposal, which I believe is up for a vote. I have read about the issue, and I can find no rationale for this action, and I suspect that it is a way of consolidating power. This action seems somewhat inconsistent with the freedom agenda that certain members of the board have expressed. The money can be used for other things, educational purposes, students, teacher salaries, or whatever, but it shouldn't be used for politics. Next, I'm making a request of the board, but I want to make this comment first. Florida has a no-aid clause in its Constitution. This clause specifically prohibits public money from going to religious or sectarian institutions. Despite that, the legislature has passed the voucher program, which allows public money to go to religious institutions. In the interest of transparency, I would like to have made public a list of those religious institutions that are receiving money via vouchers, how much, and if there's any accountability, what is being taught. This, I think, is critical. I do not know why the legislature allows this to happen, despite the fact that there was a constitutional amendment that tried to eliminate that clause, the no aid clause, several years ago, and it was soundly rejected by the voters by a vote of 60 to 37%. Whatever information you can provide to the public in the interest of transparency would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Leela Newcomb, please.
Leela Newcomb, grandma of 3 in Sarasota Public Schools, members of the board, Superintendent Connor. Today I am going to be veering away from my usual style of speaking because I believe something needs to be called out here. And it is regard to this ongoing waste of your time and my taxpayer money on the issue of redistricting. When all of you up there claim that academic achievement should be the focus of your work. I mean, what is going on? First, it was thought by many that it was because a certain member of the board didn't actually live in her district. I don't know if that's true or not. Turns out the new map being discussed wouldn't change that anyway. Then it was thought maybe it was to bump a newly announced candidate for school board out of her district, and at the same time put 2 incumbents into the same district. Foiled again, not legal. So what is left? I'm sure you've all seen this. It's the most recent report on campaign contributions, up to date, and their sources. Now, of course, you can't see the writing from there, but you can see the colors. Everybody can see the colors. Purple equals contributions from individuals, and yellow-orange from businesses. A little lopsided. One board member's lofty contributions, no offense, are mainly from businesses and very little from individual citizens. And in the fine print, it indicates that one member's contributions are primarily from real estate developers. It kind of makes one wonder about the motivations. Now, it just may be the case that every board member actually does care about the students and the academic. And perhaps there is heavy-handed influence coming from some members, husbands, family members, or other political influences. I don't know. Just a thought, draw your own conclusions, but it is pretty clear to me. And now, the process is going on, wasting more time, rubbing in the horrible waste of our money when the whole thing was smuggled in to begin with, out of the blue, without the proper protocol. I have to ask, why would any of you voted for this? And why would anybody have introduced the motion in the first place? Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Eaton, followed by Sheila Van Ness, followed by Robin Williams, please.
Hello, I'm Patrick Eaton. Thank you for letting me speak. I want to address the acceptance of diversity for our schools, of our society is made up of various religions, race, economical levels, sexual orientation, and gender identity. And that includes our youth. When we were in schools, sometimes we were bullied because of our skin, because of our grades, or we weren't intelligent, or we were struggling with learning. Was our religion different than the majority? Could we afford nice clothes? Were we overweight, skinny, freckled, or not good in sports? Growing up, were you bullied, or were you the bully? What are you now? Are you still a bully or look the other way when people are targeted? Some of our youth and families are under attack right now. Also, racism is still very present, and the education of our history with racism is needed. not to spread blame on the past, but to learn from our mistakes with that and everything else. Current attacks on families with transgender youth are happening. I know one individual who their life was threatened, death threats, and they had to move out of the state. A very positive individual who did a lot of volunteer work for youth themselves. Unless you're a parent, a doctor, or other support, you have no right or qualified knowledge to have an opinion on the lives of a transgender individual. I know they're just trying to live their life and be positive citizens in many aspects of work. I also wanted to say I am the president of the PFLAG chapter in Port Charlotte. So we're a new chapter. So what we do, it's 50 years old. We support the friends, family, and friends of BGLTQ youth. So you find out your child may be gay or transgender, you can come to our group for support. So we do support in education once a month. I have speakers, and at a business meeting once a month too. And we're 501(c), non-political. Everybody is welcome. I deal with families moving forward with love. So I try to keep in mind, even if a conservative family, they might have less contacts with dealing with it, they're welcome. We don't debate. Everything is confidential. And if anybody wants more information on my chapter, please see me afterwards. There also, our sister chapter is in Sarasota. We work together with them. Thank you.
Sheila Van Ness, followed by Robin Williams, followed by Michael Weddle, please.
Sheila Van Ness, a citizen of Sarasota County, and thank you for the opportunity to meet with you. I stand against the redistricting plan. I see no public good in making changes to the districting, and so I urge you to vote no on that issue. On the matter of books being challenged, I wonder if you have a policy or would consider developing a policy so that when books are named by some individual as being targeted, that there be some kind of rational discussion and before a decision is made. Is that a possibility? I'm asking the board to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin Williams, up next, followed by Michael Weddle, please, followed by Esther Rockwell.
It's Holocaust Remembrance Week. As a Jew, please remember book banning is anathema to the Jewish people. Once again, we need to encourage the board to set the politics of personal and partisan gain aside and do what's best for the kids, the public, and our schools. Those who voted for redistricting maps owe an apology to the public for wasting educational dollars to create maps that are further from the ideal than what currently exists. Mrs. Rose seems to have a penchant for costing the district lots of wasted dollars in the 6 figures for firing a superintendent, and now this. It's also inexcusable in light of the current financial crisis precipitated by the passage of HB 1. Last year, those same board members would not heed Mr. Edwards nor our warnings about the dangerous financial ramifications of that legislation for our public school district. HB 1's resulted in the loss of about 800 Sarasota public school students and $6.5 million to the district, and that's just in the first year. The so-called current rationale among those board members who support redistricting map 1 is that it'll be less confusing to voters if it correlates with the county commission maps. That's easily turned on its head because indeed it's the county commission maps that should mirror the closer to ideal mapping aligned with census data that exists with the current school district maps. And don't those county commission maps dilute the percentages of minority communities to minimize their influence? The existing Better School District maps didn't cost the district anything, unlike the Kurt Spitzer maps. It was the same company responsible for the 2000 19 county commission maps that resulted in Fred Atkins and a large part of the black community being moved out of District 1 into District 2 so that a vulnerable Mike Moron could get reelected District 1 commissioner. Mr. Spitzer's company can't seem to get away from the racism involved in their gerrymanderers for hire business. Or was it just sloppy math that caused the almost total erasure of the already small black community and the data appearing in the memo to the board for the previously proposed 2A redistricting? 12.9% black population in District 1 became 0.1%. 1.8% in District 2 became 0, 5.8 in District 3 became 0.1%, 2.4 in District 4 became 0, and 1.1 in District 5 became 0%. And for this, you paid $39,000. Will this redistricting enable someone currently residing outside of District 3 to suddenly live within the district and become eligible to run against Mr. Edwards? Inquiring minds want to know. After all, Mr. Edwards is on Governor DeSantis' school board member hit list. Will a suddenly appearing mystery candidate also pack a six-figure war chest? Let's not forget, too, that the original map preferred by Mrs. Rose and Ms. Marinelli was the one that had major changes to District 2. It would have put the pricey Siesta Key residence that Ms. Rose and her husband own into the district she currently represents.
Thank you.
Where it's never been before.
Thank you. Michael Whittle, please, followed by Esther Rockwell, followed by Joan Stoutenborough. Please.
Hi, I've been away. It's good to be back. Thank you for your time, to the board, Commissioner. To the students here, I hope you have a chance to come back and continue learning what's done in your name at the school board. That would be really good. We heard about bullying a few speakers back. Another National Bullying Prevention Awareness Month passed while I was away in October. I received a message from disappointed educators who received this notice from the superintendent's office, and I'm quoting, "Sarasota County Schools made the decision to cancel all Sarasota County Schools Unity Day programming for this school year." This, of course, is the signature school event of Bullying Prevention Month, where young people on both sides of the bullying problem, with parental consent, both victims and bullies often have some leadership skills, they just don't know how to use them constructively. They are brought together and taught communication and cooperation. It's a conflict resolution exercise in a school system already thin on mental health resources. Let me be clear. 1 out of every 4 school children are bullied. I was bullied in the 6th grade. In the 6th grade, it's 1 out of 3 children, and we should not be surprised that children who are bullied, the victims, are twice as likely to attempt suicide. Bullies often single out kids who don't quite fit in. Last month, our school system did exactly that, singled out and turned their back on these students. One more thing I want to discuss. We heard that it's Holocaust Remembrance Week. It's wonderful that we're doing that. It's so important. I will remind you that next Tuesday, 1 week from today, is National Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. We remember what happened last year on Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. Ruby Bridges being the young black student who had to be escorted by marshals into her school in Louisiana. Last year, we had parents who wanted to walk their children to school on Walk to School Day. And a school principal who always stands out in front of his school to welcome his students in the morning was ordered to stay in his office with the door closed, as if to not give the impression that our schools actually encourage the education of black students. No one ever explained this Jim Crow behavior from Sarasota schools. We have another shot next week at Walk to School Day. I don't know if parents are going to participate given the way that they were disrespected and insulted last year, but if they do, it's an opportunity for us to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Esther Rockwell, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I think I need a stool. My name is Esther Rockwell, and I've been a resident of Sarasota for 38 years. I have grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And I can tell you that it was great when I was growing up because everyone valued the same values that I did. The schools, the papers, the radio, and TV. But today, it's a different story. I do want to thank this board that we have today, because I think you've made a big accomplishment in trying to overrule some of the things that were done in the past. And I want to thank you for the job that you're going to have working with the new laws passed on educational policies and changing the future results for the district with underperforming students. It also puts academic achievement at the center of the district today to operate. But again, I would like to add that to see the religious schools being targeted because of the fact that they have choice schools today that they didn't have before, that was because we didn't have a need to have choice schools before. Now we do. So as far as the books are concerned, never, ever would you be allowed to bring a pornographic book to school. And for a school to allow this to happen is a disgrace. Thank you.
Thank you. Joan Stoutenborough, followed by Lisa Scher, followed by Marjorie Peters, please.
Good afternoon. Joan Stoutenborough, retired public school administrator, teacher, and grandmother of 2 students here. I'm here once again to oppose redistricting. I think it's absolutely shameful for a board member elected to facilitate best opportunities for our kids to instead waste my tax dollars by feathering their own political nests in an effort to narrow those desired opportunities and focus them on a vocal minority. Public schools are for all kids. Please keep all kids your #1 consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Lisa Scher, please, followed by Marjorie Peters, and then Sean Bartlett, or Bartelt, sorry.
Excuse me. My name is Lisa Scher. I'm a Sarasota County taxpayer and one of the founders of Support Our Schools. But tonight I'm here to speak on behalf and in support of my friends at Equality Florida in their call to action. The school district has adopted the motto, every child, every day. Perhaps we need to add to that, protect every child, respect every family, and let's add respect and protect our teachers as well. Thanks to the efforts of Ms. Ziegler's Moms for Liberty, the Florida legislature, and the governor's office, we are seeing ongoing attacks against the basic human and constitutional rights of our LGBTQ faculty, staff, students, and their families. Book banning is taking place in our schools at unprecedented levels. The Florida DOE is not only permitting but encouraging far-right indoctrination and the introduction of propaganda into our public schools. The DOE has also adopted social studies standards that embrace the bizarre idea that slavery was somehow beneficial to African Americans, and they've even put some emphasis on the idea that African Americans who engaged in self-defense were somehow perpetrating acts of violence. Google the Rosewood Massacre if you want to learn more about that one. We also have one-sided attacks on our teachers' unions. Why aren't these same rules applicable to other public sector unions like the police and firefighters? As constitutionally sworn officers, each of you has a duty to advocate for the best interests of all public school students. And now that these horrific laws are in place, you have a duty to ensure that they are interpreted in the least discriminatory manner. Silence is complicity. Your community is watching you, and it's time for you to step up to the plate. I strongly urge you not to pass the resolution with respect to the redistricting. It's time to stop wasting our tax dollars and Karen-mandering. Lest I get a scolding for being a negative Nancy, I'd like to also point out some areas where the school district is stepping up to the plate. A huge shout out to you, Superintendent Connor, for your ongoing efforts to communicate with parents and stakeholders. I strongly encourage everyone to complete the Superintendent Transition Insight Survey, which can be found on the district's website. I support the approval of Agenda Item 7 for the increase in pay for the career, technical, adult, and community education part-time salary instructors at Suncoast Technical College. We need to do more to provide career opportunities for all students, not just those moving on to college. I also support approval of Agenda Item 24, extending the timeline to participate in the electric school bus program. Any moves away from fossil fuel-operated buses are good for the district and great for the environment. Thank you all for this opportunity to provide public comments to the board.
Thank you, Mrs. Scher. Marjorie Peters, please, followed by Sean Bartelt, followed by Barbara Vaughn.
Superintendent, Madam Vice Chair, board members, my name is Marjorie Peter, resident since '87, and the parent of 3 children who long ago graduated from the district. Like Aladdin, I come with my magic lamp. I'm asking you to grant me 3 wishes. The first 2 are very easy. The third one, not so much. My first wish, please use your bully pulpit to publicize the science fair, now known as the STEM fair. Publicize the need for judges. That means giving up one day at the end of January and one morning on February 22nd. I'm no scientist, I'm an English major, but I can read an elementary student's poster to see if they have followed a technique. It's a hoot. I urge you to urge potential volunteers to step up so that each child has an opportunity to speak with at least one adult judge. They practice for it, and it means a great deal. My second wish follows along with respecting teachers. Please make it easier for all of us to volunteer in general. I'm having trouble finding a tab on the district website that takes one to an explanation of why and how to volunteer. I have to search. I'm lazy. Make it easy. Tuttle School, for example, now has 7 kindergarten classrooms. Many of those students have never been in a preschool or a pre-K program. Do you think those teachers need help? I go twice a week, but they need a lot of people to spend a half hour helping with ABCs. Please make it easy. My third wish, please reconsider your vote to push through the redistricting motion. There's another opportunity to vote. I'm hoping you've had more time to study the issue, and I urge you to reject it for 3 reasons. I still haven't heard a stated reason to spend the funds now when you've established a hiring freeze instead of waiting for the next census, and it's been asked for repeatedly. The second, the desire to mimic the county commissioner's map implies that perhaps the commissioners or a political party may have recommended that action. Did they, and if so, do you take direction from them? We should know that. And lastly, your own board chair, Ms. Ziegler, voted against that motion at the last meeting. To me, that signals there's no great urgency to tackle this now and to spend the money not only for the consultant, but for attorney fees, no offense, Mr. Duggan, that will continue as you push this motion forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Bartelt, followed by Barbara Vaughn, followed by Liz Barker, please.
Good job on that last name. I went to Alta Vista, Southside, Brookside, and Sarasota High School. I'm a USF, UF graduate, and long-term Sarasota person. And I agree, you should not vote for the redistricting plan. I was a general manager of a television station, really followed redistricting. To redistrict so close to, within 2 years of when the districts were drawn, just doesn't make sense. And I think you need to think about the fact it will make you look really bad to the public. It's not going to make you look good. Additionally, I'm a gay woman. I've been married to the same woman for 37 years, only 10 of those legally. We adopted 2 kids, and they suffered enormous bullying in schools because they had 2 moms. Now, what's interesting, in 2003, when we moved to Charlotte, they started in a magnet school. It was, very conservative Charlotte back then. And two of the teachers went to the principal and said they had an issue with us. And the principal said, you have to treat them exactly the way you treat all other parents and kids. Now, my spouse got involved with PTA. Those teachers took her to lunch a month later and apologized, told her what they did, and said that they were wrong. And I have to say, every single neighborhood we've lived in, every single neighbor who's religious and Christian has said we're the best thing that ever happened to the neighborhood. But these kids are getting bullied in schools, and it's not right, and they're not acknowledged for who they are. And, you can provide distinct guidance on how to enforce the Don't Say Gay legislation, and I think you need to be doing that. And I think also banning books because of diverse viewpoints, character stories, and identities is just wrong. And you need to have a thoughtful, thorough, clear procedure for how to challenge materials and resources without amplifying bigotry. And I have to say, I tried to read a ton of the books that people want to have banned, and I couldn't find anything. I mean, I gave up after 5. And parents can choose which books their kids shouldn't read at the library, and it should be up to other parents. Also, let's see how much time. David Begnell, CBS correspondent, went to a Catholic school. He was gay. His parents were abusive, not because of that. They were just abusive. He had a nun at the Catholic. She realized he had issues. She took him in and said, what's going on? He told her. She supported him. She made him feel good about who he was. And we can't do that in our public schools today, and that's sad.
Thank you. Barbara Vaughn, please, followed by Liz Barker.
Good afternoon. I'm going to start a little differently today because I know that you're all wondering, do what your mother told you. Watch where you're going. Failure to do so may result in something like this or even worse. But as usual, I am here to pray. I received a wonderful prayer for educators from the American Family Association, and I thought I'd share it with you. Our great and kind Father, in the name of our Savior, we thank you for the women and men who teach and serve our children and young people, and for those who oversee and support their efforts. May our educators be ever aware that their students are made in your image. Therefore, they are worthy of respect, patience, kindness, encouragement, and when necessary, discipline. We pray for strength and courage for our teachers amid stress, anxiety, and feelings of inadequacy. We ask that they find great joy and satisfaction in their role of helping shape the lives of future generations. Lord, we are concerned with the people, organizations, events, and social movements that would work evil in our children's lives. Give grace and wisdom to educators whose consciences and livelihoods are threatened by the march of godlessness in our nation. May they rise with confident humility to stand on your word, walk in your way, and persevere in what is right. Lord, we know that educating our children can be an underappreciated calling. So please prompt all of us often to offer a listening ear to our educators and practical help in whatever way we can. In the name of him who is the fount of all knowledge and wisdom. Amen.
Thank you. Liz Barker, please.
Superintendent Connor, board members, good afternoon. I'm Liz Barker, mom of 4 children in Sarasota County Public Schools, former school psychologist, candidate for school board, and president of the PTO at Lakeview Elementary School. As we prepare to adopt new social studies textbooks today, I'd like to take a moment to share with the board my experience as the parent representative for the K-5 Math Textbook Adoption Committee. This summer, I had the privilege of helping with the selection of a new elementary mathematics curriculum along with a large group of highly qualified teachers. I entered the process with the assumption that there would be many high-quality options available for review. I was wrong. I quickly learned that the Florida Department of Education had already censored the selections to such a degree that there were only 5 textbooks to choose from. Even before we were permitted to begin viewing the materials, we were required to watch a video detailing our responsibility to report any content which could be construed as culturally responsive or elicit social or emotional learning. With these cautions in mind, we began the review process and received a rubric to rate the content for alignment with the curriculum, application of best standards, etc. Each rubric also contained a detailed selection with questions about whether the content contained any mention of social justice, critical race theory, social emotional learning, sexual orientation, or gender identity. None of our elementary level math textbooks contained any such content. Regardless, there was a sense of anxiety around this as a group, driven by all the precautions we'd just gone through to be sure that there was no social justice lurking among the long division. I can only imagine that the anxiety was amplified in the social studies review committees. To the credit of the outstanding professionals in the committee, we went about the business of selecting the best possible option for our students despite this climate of unease. The experience led me to wonder, what other resources are we limiting, censoring, or removing from consideration? I'm aware that the district is conducting an internal review of our school library materials. As a parent, I'm asking the board to make this process transparent. Where are we in this process? What are the standards for the internal review? If and when books are removed from any of our schools, parents and educators have the right to know about it. The current climate of fear around books and materials would be alleviated by the board making a clear statement about how they are handling these issues. Teachers should never feel afraid to purchase books for their classroom libraries, but they are. Media specialists should not be afraid to purchase books for school libraries, but they are. As a board, you have a responsibility to engage the community in this process, and I'm asking you today to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Hayes, please, followed by Thomas Ruiz and Thomas Spatero.
I'm Bill Hayes, and I have a son who graduated from the public schools here. And I'm only here about the vote for the redistricting. If everybody voted to have a consultant come in, please heed the advice that you gave yourself and take the advice, which was number 1, was keep everything just as it was. Seems easy.
Thank you, sir. Thomas Ruiz. Last name is spelled R-U-E-E-I-S. Perhaps I'm mispronouncing it. Please correct me.
Yeah, it's Rackus, but that's okay.
Looks like E's instead of C's. My apology.
That's no problem. Just didn't think it was me. First, I'd like to ask the board to reject the redistricting policies and vote no on the redistricting. Second, I'd like to make a comment about the effect of books on children. How many of us read Lord of the Flies and immediately started killing pigs and painting our bodies with smeared blood? Kids are far more perceptive and insightful than these do-good birds give them credit for. As a matter of fact, these books give kids their first opportunities to interact with simile, metaphor, allegory, context, connotation, and all the crucial elements to critical thinking. Dick and Jane may teach a child to read words, but they lack the ability to help kids learn to reason and analyze. This is the final page of Lori Halsey Anderson's Speak, printed in 1999, an award-winning young adult novel that won the 2000 Top 10 Best Books for Young Adults Award. A comment about censorship. These are scary days in which to raise teenagers. I know I have 4 of them. Part of the problem is that we have a generation that has been exposed to unprecedented amounts of sexual behavior in the media and on the internet. They see it, they talk about it, their hormones react, and a lot of kids wind up in painful situations. Literature is the safe and traditional vehicle through which we learn about the world and pass on values from one generation to the next. Books save lives. Contemporary young adult literature surprises some people because it's an accurate reflection of the way today's teenagers talk, think, and behave. But these books must be honest in order to connect to the teen reader. America's teens are desperate for responsible, trustworthy adults to create situations in which they can discuss the issues that are the highest concerns for them. Reading and discussing books is one of the most effective ways to get teens to think through and learn about the challenges of adolescence. Most of the censorship I see is fear-driven. I respect that. The world is a very scary place. It is a terrifying place in which to raise children, and in particular teenagers. It is human nature, but censoring anybody, quite the opposite. It leaves kids in darkness and makes them vulnerable. Censorship is the child of fear and the father of ignorance. Our children cannot afford to have the truth of the world withheld from them. They need to be brave enough to give them great books so they can learn how to grow up into the men and women we want them to be. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thomas Spatero, please, followed by Bill Neese, and then Elizabeth Bornstein.
Hi, my name is Thomas Patero. I am a Vietnam veteran, and I'm a non-resident, although we do own property here. We've been coming down here for about 11 years. And the question I have is actually pertaining to millage. I'm not sure if this is the right part of this to ask this question, but as everybody knows, the values of all the properties in Sarasota County have gone up substantially over the last years. Our property here has gone up 74% in 2 years, our assessments, and as a result, my taxes have gone up $1,500, and $1,100 of that $1,500 is school taxes. And the question I have is, I'm trying to understand how it is that the millage has gone up, even though the property values have gone up substantially. I'd like to have someone answer that question sometime during this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for your service. Bill Neese, please, followed by Elizabeth Bornstein, and then Mary Lynn McKeon.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Neese. I have grandchildren in the district. I've been a long-term resident of the district, taxpayer, which most of us are, and also happen to serve as the chairman of the board for the regional detention facility for a four-county area for youth. And I know the difficulties that youth face and sometimes bring with them due to circumstances that they've had to live through. And so difficult circumstances do not imply that youth have options about what they can and cannot do. Those options are many times regulated by law, parental, school, and other circumstances. So we never need to think that children are not to be helped in the process. And I know that's your intention. The constant pressure of serving in the role of a board and superintendent in a way that comports a responsible and lawful, dutiful manner is always a tension. So I want to thank you for the progress that you are making towards refocusing the district on the central issue of academic achievement. Policies that support that main issue are creating the foundation for this shift to happen. Old policies that have taken valuable time and energy away from this focus by necessity had to be changed or eliminated. I applaud the hard work of incorporating state mandates and law that must be implemented into district policies and practice. You are required by your oath to have oversight that such policies are actually carried out through district leadership. A difficult task, but a necessary one. So stay the course, even under the duress at times, of doing the hard work of improving a good district to become a great district. When the lower quartile of the students in this district are performing at or above grade level, there will be little dispute as to what the focus was to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth, if you could please come up. Elizabeth Bornstein, followed by Mary Lynn McKeon.
Greetings, Superintendent, Board Attorney, Student Representative. As a parent, I just want to keep coming. I want to represent other parents who can't be here. It's really important for us to represent our children, the students of Sarasota County Schools. And as a parent, I'm seriously concerned when there's a lack of transparency and distractions amongst the board, when it just takes away from the learning and academic achievement for our students. And I'm greatly concerned when there's wasteful spending, as we know recently has been the case with the redistricting and mapping process. And I'm extremely fearful about the repercussions HB1 privatization will have on the survival of public education in our community and beyond. I'm concerned about the mental health needs of our students being on the rise and them being impacted by bullying and the suppression of expressing diversity. And on the anniversary of the Hamas attacks from 10/7, we're honoring Holocaust Education Week in Florida schools. This week is chosen in recognition of the anniversary of Kristallnacht, which is widely acknowledged as the event that led to the Holocaust. And this week is an opportunity for students to learn the history of the Holocaust and anti-Semitism, as well as the serious consequences that follow. And amidst an alarming spike of anti-Semitism and violence on college campuses, these lessons are, of course, essential in every classroom, starting in elementary school. We need to talk to our students about that and a lot of things. And I want to thank the board and Chief Lorenz and the schools police for honoring your responsibility to do your best at all times to keep our children and school personnel safe in these tenuous times. Every child deserves to feel safe, welcome, appreciated while at school without exception. Without exception. And I hope you will honor Ruby Bridges' Walk to School Day. That's really an important event. And we owe it to our children. We need your leadership to come together all the time and work together all the time. Mrs. Rose, you previously pointed out we need to be accountable always and take the time to stop and think and analyze and reflect on what supports the best interests of our students, teachers, staff, and administrators. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bornstein. And our last speaker this evening, welcome Mary Lynn McKeon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Mary Lynn McKeon, and I'm here with Equality Florida. I'm a member of the LGBTQ community here. And I'll start with a quote from Wanda Sykes. Until we see a drag queen beating a bunch of children to death with To Kill a Mockingbird, I think we're focusing on the wrong things. A funny way of saying, but a very serious thing, which is, you know, I'm glad that we are speaking about Holocaust Remembrance Month because, you know, if you look at what is occurring in Florida, a lot of the things make you think, I think I've seen this film before and I didn't like the ending, as Taylor Swift would say. You know, I work with teenagers, I volunteer with teenagers, and it's quite frightening to be a person who is different in this in this community, in these schools, they're frightened. They're bullied. They're treated as second-class citizens, and it's wrong. We're committing, as a state, Florida is committing an egregious wrong against these children. And I just had to speak up and say something about it. And, you know, I would also include children of differing abilities, of intellectual disabilities and physical disabilities, anyone who's different. The message we're sending is the people who are different, it's okay to erase them. It's okay to push them aside, you know, and that's not the message that we want our kids to grow up with. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. McKeon, and thank you to all of our public speakers for taking the time to come out this evening and address the board. We're moving on to additions and corrections to the consent agenda. Superintendent Connor, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. An addendum was added to item 6, the instructional/classified personnel report.
Do I have a motion for the board to approve the amended consent agenda consisting of items as a whole with action recorded as if it had been taken?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and we will take a voice vote, starting with Mr. Edwards, please.
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
And Ms. Ziegler, are you with us? Bridget Ziegler, can you hear us?
Have her on mute if she's talking. She's muted. Ms. Ziegler, if you can hear us, you need to unmute first.
She says she's not on mute.
As the superintendent reads his watch for text messages.
All right, give me 1 second. So she's muted there. Yeah, it shows that she's muted on our side.
You can ask them.
I did. Oh, there she is. You can hear us now? Go ahead and...
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Okay, wonderful. I vote yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Ziegler. And
Vote-
I'm sorry, did you have something else?
No, that's all.
Thank you. And the consent agenda as amended passes 5-0. Does anyone have, any of my colleagues have any comments regarding the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. And before we start new business, I would just like to add that this board has not banned any books. I think that's important to say. And Mr. Duggan, if you could talk a bit about the new business agenda item relative to the resolution and what it means as far as passing a map, in that we did have the passing of the map. If you could give a little bit more information on those pieces for board members as well as the public.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, Florida Statute 1001.36 is the statute that governs redistricting. It has a number of criteria in it, including what needs to happen once the board approves different districts. Of course, to formalize that, there's a process. It involves approval of minutes of the board meeting where that occurred, which is what happened on October 17th, and which you just approved in item number 5 of the consent agenda. It involves then having a resolution issued to get to give effect to the vote that you made at the last board meeting, and then you take the map and you take the narrative description that were approved at the last board meeting, you combine them with the resolution, and you take the minutes to demonstrate that all of those things were approved at a properly noticed public meeting, and you file those with Florida's Secretary of State and the local clerk of court here. And then I'm sure the supervisor of elections would like to get a copy of that as well. So the vote you're about to take today about the resolution is just to formalize the actions that you took at the last board meeting on October 17th and to put them in the proper format so that they can be properly recorded in conformance with state statute.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to any comments, questions relative to that?
Not to that, but just something else.
Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know it's not common practice. This is the business of the board, obviously, but there was one particular comment that I think it's relative to share. There was a request about the millage and how that's calculated, and I just want to help in helping the community understand that each year as the millage is passed, that required local effort is set by the county, and that has been reduced year after year. Though property values have gone up and there's more taxable value, the required local effort has actually been reduced, the overall millage rate. So last year, the overall total millage was 6.272, and that is down this year to 6.180. So for taxpayers, you would incur a $618 in school taxes for every $100,000 of taxable value of your home. And that was a decrease of $9.20 per $100,000 in value. So although we may be bringing in more revenue in terms of that because property values have skyrocketed over the years, the total millage has actually reduced over the years. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Connor, for addressing that. Much appreciated. Seeing no other comments, we will move on to item number 28, that the certificate resolution and the related financing documents for certificates of participation, Series 2023A be approved as presented. Do I have a motion?
I move for the motion.
Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second, and we will take a voice vote. Mr. Edwards, please.
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and that passes unanimously 5-0. Moving on, and that is that the certificate resolution and the related financing documents for certificates of participation, Series 2023A, be approved as presented. Item number 29, that the superintendent evaluation instrument as developed and refined collaboratively by the school board and the superintendent be approved as presented. Do I have a motion?
I move for the approval of the superintendent evaluation instrument.
A second?
Second.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes, in full disclosure, I had a conversation with Mr. Connor in our recent one-on-one, and we talked about really focusing in on our Hispanic community and how that could have been included in the instrument. And not wanting to hold that up, we both agreed that it would be a good idea for the board to consider it in the strategic plan. So not to hold up the evaluation instrument, I just wanted to make sure the board was aware that that's a concern of mine, as I know is the rest of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. And we will take a voice vote. Mr. Edwards, please.
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 29 passes unanimously that the superintendent evaluation instrument as developed and refined collaboratively by the school board and the superintendent be approved as presented. Item number 30, that the real property lease agreement with Milestone Tower Management LLC for Woodland Middle School be presented as approved. Do I have a motion, please?
I move that the real property lease agreement with Milestone Tower Management LLC for Woodland Middle School be approved as presented.
Do I have a second? Second. Thank you. A voice vote, please, Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
No.
And the vice chair votes yes, and the item passes 4-1. I do want to add that I did do some background checking because I know there are some different parts of the Sarasota County community that have concern with the towers. It's my understanding that the Woodland Middle School community and the Northport community were very much in favor of the tower and increasing their connectivity, which was the rationale behind my vote. Seeing no other comments, moving on to item number 31, move to adopt School Board of Sarasota County, Florida Resolution 2023-01, including its proposed exhibits that are identified in the resolution, and authorize legal counsel to take all necessary steps to finalize the redistricting process. Do I have a motion?
I move for approval of the School Board of the Sarasota County, Florida Redistricting Resolution 2023-01.
And do I have a second?
Second.
And seeing no comments, taking a voice vote, Mr. Edwards?
No.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
No.
And the vice chair votes yes, and the motion passes 3-2. Moving on to item number 32 in new business, that the renewal of the amended and restated operational assistance and voluntary cooperation agreement between the City of Sarasota and the School Board of Sarasota County, Florida be approved as presented. Do I have a motion?
I move for the renewal of the amended and restated operational assistance voluntary cooperation agreement between the City of Sarasota and the School Board of Sarasota County, Florida be approved as presented.
And is there a second? Second. And seeing no comments, Mr. Edwards, voice vote, please.
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 32 passes unanimously. Item number 33, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the grade K social studies textbook as recommended.
Make the recommendation the school board approve the selection and the purchase of the grade K social studies textbook as recommended.
Second.
Thank you.
Second.
Superintendent Connor has a comment, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Just want to make sure the public is aware. So what you'll notice is a little bit different than what's been done historically related to the adoption and the approval of instructional materials. As a result of newly passed legislation, part of that legislation requires school districts now to approve on a separate line item on new business the titles and publishers of what we are adopting. So that is why today you are seeing 20 items related to the instructional materials. We did follow the protocols related to the statute around the public hearing and the process of vetting our materials with our committees, and we are now at the point of approving the adoption and the purchase. I want to thank Sue Meckler and Rachel O'Day and the team for putting a lot of work and effort into this. It's a lot of new territory that we've had to go over related to new legislation. So thanks to the team for that, and thank you for a process of putting us in a good position related to the settlement agreement with the mathematics adoption, and looking forward to our social studies adoption this year. So thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Connor. Seeing no other further comments, call for a voice vote. Mr. Edwards, please.
Yes.
Mr. Enos.
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli.
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 33 passes unanimously. Item number 34, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the grade 1 social studies textbook as recommended. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, if I may, at this
Please.
point, as legal counsel, is there any way in order to package these as presented from items 34 through that based on the textbooks, or do we have to individually voice vote per textbook?
You have to vote on, per statute, per recent legislation, you have to vote on each specific instructional material as a separate line item and a separate vote. So there, unfortunately, it's a slow process, but we got to go through them one by one in order to comply with the statute.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I'll move that the school board approve the selection and purchase of grade 1 social studies textbook as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comment, I will call for a voice vote. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 34 passes unanimously. Item number 35, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the grade 2 social studies textbook as recommended. Do I have a motion?
I make the motion as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comment, I will call for a voice vote. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Don't make me laugh. Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 35 passes unanimously. Item number 36, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the grade 3 social studies textbook as recommended.
I make the motion as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comments, call for a voice vote. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 36 passes unanimously. Item number 37, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the grade 4 social studies textbook as recommended.
I make the motion to approve it as presented.
Second.
And seeing no comments, calling for a voice vote. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 37 passes unanimously. Item number 38, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the grade 5 social studies textbook as recommended.
I make the motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comment, Mr. Edwards, your vote, please.
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Mrs. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 38 passes unanimously. Item number 39, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the grade 6 social studies textbook as recommended.
Make the motion as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comments, calling for a voice vote. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Mrs. Marinelli?
Yes.
Ms. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 39 passes unanimously. Item number 40, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the grade 7 social studies textbook as recommended.
Make the motion as presented.
Second.
And seeing no comment, calling for a voice vote. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 40 passes unanimously. Item number 41, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the grade 8 social studies textbook as recommended.
Make the motion as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comment, calling for a voice vote. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 41 passes unanimously. Item number 42, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the high school economics social studies textbook as recommended.
I make the motion as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comment, calling for a voice vote. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 42 passes unanimously. Item number 43, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the high school government social studies textbook as recommended.
Make the motion as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comment, calling for a voice vote. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 43 passes unanimously. Item number 44, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the high school psychology, social studies textbook as recommended.
Make the motion as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comment, calling for a voice vote. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 44 passes unanimously. Item number 45, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the high school U.S. History Social Studies textbook as recommended.
Make the motion as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comments, Mr. Edwards calling for a voice vote.
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 45 passes unanimously. Item number 46, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the high school world history social studies textbook as recommended.
Make the motion as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comment, calling a voice vote, Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes. Item number 46 passes unanimously. Item number 47, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the middle school grade 6, course 1, advanced math textbook as recommended.
Make the motion as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comment and calling for a voice vote, Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 47 passes unanimously. Item number 48, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the middle school grade 6 course 1 math textbook as recommended.
Make the motion as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comment and calling for a voice vote, Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 48 passes unanimously. Item number 49, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the middle school grade 7 course 2 advanced math textbook as recommended.
Make the motion as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comment, calling for a voice vote. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 49 passes unanimously. Item number 50, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the middle school grade 7 course 2 math textbook as recommended.
Make the motion as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comment and calling for a voice vote, Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 50 passes unanimously. Item number 51, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the middle school grade 8 pre-algebra math textbook as recommended.
Make the motion as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comments and calling for a voice vote, Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 51 passes unanimously. Item number 52, that the school board approve the selection and purchase of the high school pre-calculus math textbook as recommended.
Make the motion as presented.
Second.
Seeing no comments and calling for a voice vote, Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Enos?
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 52 passes unanimously. At this time, do we have a comment any comments from board members?
Madam Vice Chair, I wanted to wait if I'm recognized.
Please, Mrs. Ziegler.
Thank you. Well, first, I want to apologize for not being there. It was very unexpected. So thank you to Jamal and Kathy for a quick, and to Mrs. Rose for a quick pivot there. My daughter was unexpectedly more sick than we had anticipated. However, I wanted to address a couple things. And again, since when it's over the phone, I didn't want to, it's just even trying to get unmuted was slightly disruptive. So my apologies. I did want to highlight one of the items on the consent agenda, which was the articulation agreement with SCS. Those who have followed this for years, we actually, a few years back in 2019, the superintendent at the time had, and for a myriad of other reasons, there was a severed relationship, and so that dual enrollment opportunities were no longer provided, and that had a substantial impact to a lot of our high school students. And it's been a priority of mine, I know, and members of this board, and I want to thank Superintendent Connor and team for making that a priority and reestablishing that relationship. I know our students are going to be better for it, as will families. So again, thank you for that. There is one matter I did want to bring to the attention of the board and the public. It has been discussed a handful of, I believe publicly with a member of public comment. A recent board meeting, I know the superintendent and I and council have vigorously discussed this, and I guess it'll probably be to everyone's benefit that I am not there in person, so it probably won't be as passionate as a discussion as I've had behind the scenes. But it pertains to the IEP recording policy that this board first approved for advertising on February 21st, and then therefore was adopted. It comes to know, I know the board members know this, but just for the benefit of the public, there was a letter sent when there was notification that we were going to be discussing and adopting this policy, as it was certainly a highly discussed topic and a priority of many of these members of the board, including myself, very vocally. And so December 15th, there was a demand to bargain. February 10th, our counsel, Leonard Dietzen, who was retained to handle this matter, wrote a letter back to the union in regards to this. There were two executive sessions, but ultimately the crux of it was that the decision was that there would be no additional conditions for a parent or legal guardian to record an IEP meeting, as it has been. Is really just codifying the status quo, a practice that, and I know my colleagues who have been, that predate me at Sarasota County Schools can attest to this, but this was a practice that had been long tested for over 20 years, and we were merely putting this practice into policy in written form. And so there were quite a bit of conversation, but it was a very laborious conversation, and the piece was that there would be no additional preconditions, meaning the one specific was having a parent or legal guardian sign off on the usage of the recording. There has been a lot of speculation around social media. I'm just giving this for a precursor. I do want to request that in a minute here, ask the superintendent to respond. But recently we were made aware, despite the fact that the board as a whole took action on this policy, very vocally removing the language of the additional language to require any preconditions that a parent sign off. There was discussion that there would be more improvement on professional development and coaching our staff, but that there was never to be an additional burden for families. And then to find out that it's found its way into a form has certainly caused me quite a bit of consternation, and I'm putting that very lightly. But to be fair, this does predate our current superintendent. He has been very responsive in my concerns. And so I had asked him to do some due diligence and fact finding. Ultimately, the question is how and who opted to create this form, despite the conversations that we were not, as a board, going to change and require any additional preconditions for a parent or legal guardian, and because it did not impact the working environment, as this was, again, status quo over 2 decades. And so it really, I will say, I know there's members of the public who have brought it forward. People may think this is not that big of a deal. There's 2 reasons I think it's very important. one, I think it's important that what the board enacts as policy, that procedures follow that spirit, and that this is actually quite the opposite. It's almost as if it, I can't remember what council said, it really does, it's in direct conflict of what the board's action was. And so this was done through a administrative process. And so that really undermines any work of the board. And then also, I just fundamentally, as one board member, very strongly believe in this policy and how we adopted it as a board. And so seeing this added in under the radar, whether that was the intent or not, I feel very strongly that this be addressed and us understand what took place. So, Mr. Connor, if you could please provide us an update or some additional insight, and then we can discuss what we do next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, much like Ms. Ziegler said, there was a letter sent from the union to bargain this item, a demand to bargain, and so that did transpire around February. So I'm kind of, coming in at the end of the movie here, but in my fact-finding process, that demand to bargain was negotiated with our chief negotiator, Leonard Dietzen, in terms of our bargaining. And so that during that process, there was an acknowledgement form agreed upon by both parties, I think, in the spirit of protecting teachers and the perception or what could potentially happen with these video recording or these audio recordings placed on social media, maybe in a malicious manner, that we would. Both parties agreed that an acknowledgement form about the appropriate use of the recordings and what should or shouldn't be done be codified on a form, at least that those participating in the meeting would have the acknowledgement and know how to proceed if a recording was to take place in an IEP meeting. So the entire form is really about what is the successful protocols of an IEP meeting. Within that, there is a bullet in there that talks about the appropriate use of recording and what the expectation would be not to place things on social media. Now, that is not a legally binding document, so we cannot really stop a parent from using those recordings in whatever fashion they want. But I think at the time when that was agreed upon by both parties, that the union SCTA felt comfortable that it was a layer of protection for teachers not to be maybe exploited in a malicious fashion, or those videos or recordings be chopped up and a message be sent out in a way that wasn't accurate in terms of that. Now, whether that happens or not, I think that was just a perception issue. What we have to do moving forward is, if that is not the direction of the board and that's not what they intended, we would need to talk about our next steps regarding that. Has been bargained, and so we would need to bring that back as a bargaining item moving forward. So that's where we're at right now, and I will continue to do some fact-finding in terms of where the disconnect was from the board's direction in establishing the policy and then in connection with the actual procedure with the form. So we're still working through that.
Thank you so much. And Madam Vice Chair, if I may.
Please.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Connor. So just because these details do matter, and again, this is my first opportunity to really bring this forward to the board, and to Mr. Connor's point, yes, he is coming in at the end of the movie, and I have a full timeline, but as mentioned, this was number one priority of this board, and I don't want to speak for all board members, but I certainly know a majority of the board, and I'm not trying to isolate anyone out, but this was a high priority, and it was very clearly and visible and well known throughout the community. And this explicit piece was debated at exhaustion. And so when I find that, and it was never agreed to in our executive sessions or discussion to add this provision, which was actually stripped from the actual policy that was adopted. So there's a disconnect, but what I'm still waiting to understand is both parties agreed upon, but that is not an accurate statement in my personal opinion, because the party being the board, but then there was the management piece was bargained in direct conflict of the board's direction. And so that part the part I think is very important to understand how that occurred. And then, who drafted the language, who included that, because those things are very, very critical when it comes to, I will say Mrs. Marinelli, for example, has brought up, and not specific to this topic, but and I can attest this, but as a board, a governing policy, we create policy. That is one of our primary responsibilities. When there are certainly, it's under management's purview to create procedures on how to enact that policy. And if we have given in the past some kind of authority to management or to administration, to bargain in conjunction with the spirit and intent and direction of the board, when that is done in direct conflict, I think it's a very important piece to raise issue with. And I welcome conversation from my fellow board members, but I don't know that we really found a resolution, but I really do reject the notion of, one, we needing to bargain it from the first place. That was the effort that our council said, we will sit down, we will open the discussion, but even in the letter dated February 10th, it was very clearly stated that was fully in management's right to create this policy and to move forward. There was no agreement based on this board to add that provision. And so when there are both parties agreed upon, that does not include the board. I think we need some clarity there, and that the entire process of this discussion initially was, again, under the advice of counsel of the requirement to impact bargain, but that does not require us to accept any kind of changes, certainly ones that would neuter the policy that we adopted. Again, so I could go round and round. I know I have with you guys privately, but to bring this issue, which I believe is very substantial, just in the pure practice of our board and the role of elected representatives, and having something be done in not just, in direct conflict of the direction that this board took for this specific policy. I do believe it warrants a discussion, and then what our options are moving forward.
Thank you, Ms. Ziegler. Yes, to clarify, you are correct. In my attempt to explain from what I found through the fact finding, both parties being those who are at the table negotiating this particular form. So I do agree that it seems, at least from what you shared with me, that there is a disconnect on whether staff negotiated this particular form and approved by the board to do so. And I think that's the unknown right now, and the disconnect that will need to be resolved.
Okay, well then, unless again, I can't see if there are any other board members who want to comment. I would just say that, one, I want to make sure the public understands that I personally am taking this very seriously. I wanted to afford the opportunity for the board to weigh in and also get updated on it. I do, again, thank Mr. Connor for looking into it. I want to make sure that you said something, that this is not an enforceable requirement. And while I would hope that this is now something that would also, sadly, have to be raised in every meeting, really kind of undermining the whole purpose of starting with a positive and fair approach. But that ultimately also is, what are our options to ensure that, one, to understand what took place, how do we assure that we don't find ourselves in this situation again for any future items, but also how do we reverse course here when action was taken, again, in direct conflict with the board? And do we need to add another step? I know that, again, Mr. Duggan and I spoke at length, that this was brought forward in the, the forms committee, but that doesn't come back to the board, and may or may not, but this is, again, when you have something that's so dramatically different, explicitly in complete opposite of what the board wanted, to have that take place in the forms committee, it almost, again, lends itself to the conversation where, again, I'm going to reference Mrs. Marinelli, of the concern of the board adopts policies, yet we find procedures, or in this case, forms that do not line up. And again, Mr. Connor, I know that this is, you're coming in on this, but I will not personally, as one board member, just allow this to kind of be it's unfortunate, but I think this is a principal issue that really does create frustration and mistrust, and really question what the authority of to make sure that there's very clear understanding that the board taking one action, and if we see staff do another, what is our options?
Ms. Marinelli?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And Mrs. Ziegler, thank you for that recap, because when I saw that on social media, I really was a little confused, because I know that we all talked about it at great length. So not to have to repeat anything that you've said, but that is why I brought up that procedures really need to come back to the board for us to look at, to make sure everything is aligned. Because I would hate to think that there are anything else out there that the board has been very clear of how we want things to be done, and then it's being done another way. So I still think that procedures need to come back along with the policy, so we know what exactly is going out to staff, going out to parents, and that it does align with this board on the policy. So thank you.
We are going to move to the financing corporation portion of this meeting, but before we do, we have loose ends. I've heard fact-finding, I've heard reverse course, I've heard that there's bargaining, that this is in the contract as it is stated. And Superintendent Connor's nodding his head, yes, Mrs. Ziegler, if you can't see. And I guess I'm referring to Mr. Duggan, to legal counsel.
Okay, so about which part?
Well, are you asking for something to be done, Mrs. Ziegler, at this point, outside of fact-finding, the potential of reversing course, and then there's the bargaining piece that this is in the contract? Are you...
Order, Vice Chair. This is not new business. We're in the new business phase, and we're in someplace else. So as much as I want to resolve the issue, I want to continue on with our meeting if we can.
Well, thank you, Mr. Edwards. Actually, the presiding chair asked for any comments, and that's what I was responding to. And so, since if I may, Mrs. Rose.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Ziegler, what was your last sentence?
I know, I just wanted to make sure to be recognized. As far as my request is, what are the next steps? And again, I'm wanting to address it publicly, wanting to make sure the board was aware. But I personally find it, I'm speechless, really, quite frankly. So what are our options? And I wanted to make sure that the public very clearly understands what took place. I know the superintendent knows he's going to continue, I guess, evaluating it, but what are our options? If I've been told that we have to bargain something that was never given authorization to really be put into the contract in the first place. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Ziegler. And I did ask for comments. They are taking longer than we expected, but I do very much appreciate the transparency. And Mr. Edwards, I did see your name. I didn't have a chance to recognize you yet, but I'm assuming that you recognized yourself.
As I said, I appreciate that this is something that needs to be discussed. I just would, if comments should, as member comments, would be just following our place. And I'm not trying to, I know it's a hard job when it lands in your lap last second. So I would like to just finish the meeting, and then we can member comment until we finish.
Rest assured, we will finish the meeting. Mr. Edwards, thank you for your input. It sounds like we are looking for legal counsel for one last piece of what are the options from a legal standpoint.
Sure. So my recommendation would be to conduct an executive session and discuss it amongst yourselves, but some of the potential options would include trying to rebargain that form and removing that provision or any other provisions that are inconsistent with what the board wishes to do.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further comment, we will move on to the Financing Corporation portion of this meeting. At this time, the regular board meeting will be recessed. The Financing Corporation for the School Board of Sarasota County, Florida will convene to approve one item, approval of corporate resolution and related financing documents for certificates of participation, Series 2023A. Both the school board and the Financing Corporation for the school board need to approve this item. We will proceed to item number 53. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Madam Vice Chair, we're going to have our CFO, Bonnie Pinner, come up and explain what action you're taking right here.
Thank you, Superintendent Connor.
Good evening. So today you have, as a board, approved the resolution to issue debt to support the construction of the high school at Welling Park High. So we've already started construction on that project, and there was a GMP issued for a portion that related to site work. We are anticipating very shortly that you will receive a second GMP, which will be for the construction of this project. So it's time for us to make sure that we have funding in hand. So we've, what you're seeing again is the board has just approved giving the Financing Corporation the authority to issue debt to fund this project. The amount of debt to be issued, we've got a cap of $225 million. However, we believe that we will be issuing slightly less than that. I believe they're tallying up the bids, and we rebid the project, or I shouldn't take credit for that. The operations team rebid the project to see if we could get the absolute best pricing on that high school. So we will be, again, we will be issuing debt in the form of certificates of participation up to $225 million, less than that as we get that finalized, again, in order to fund this project. We plan to go to the market to issue this debt first week of December, and then we will have the final signing of those documents before the holiday break. And if you have technical questions, I have a wonderful team over here that can give you more information if you need so on the true technical nature of this debt.
Seeing no comments, we will move on, or questions. Thank you, Mrs. Penner.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated. To item number 53 under Financing Corporation, that the Financing Corporation for the School Board of Sarasota County, Florida approve the corporate resolution and related financing documents for certificates of participation, Series 2023A, as presented.
I make the motion as presented.
I have a motion and I have a second, and seeing no comments, I will call for a voice vote. Mr. Edwards, please.
Yes.
Mr. Enos.
Yes.
Ms. Marinelli.
Yes.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes, and item number 53 passes unanimously. At this time, the Financing Corporation for the School Board of Sarasota County, Florida will adjourn. The regular board meeting will reconvene. And we are going to member comments, and out of respect for Mr. Edwards to want to get to this part, and out of respect for Mrs. Ziegler's input and her comments, I did ask for legal counsel to give a recommendation relative to Mrs. Ziegler's input. Ms. Marinelli had input. Is there a desire of this board to ask the superintendent to schedule an executive? It's not a vote, it's just, is there an interest of this board to have an executive session relative to, I see that there is an interest, so we will ask the superintendent to schedule that. And now move to comments. Mrs. Ziegler, do you have further comments, please?
No, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Mr. Edwards, do you have comments, please? Thank you, sir, and thank you for your patience. Mr. Enos?
Yeah, just a couple quick ones. Number one, I know that bullying was brought up. Last month was Bullying Prevention Month. We've done some social media. We actually did one down at Northport High School in reference for parents and students. There's another one coming up this week at Booker High School regarding social media. I know that majority, almost it's more than 50% of all students will at some point get some type of bullying through social media in a lifetime. But ultimately, just to understand is that the policy that we have for the bullying, parents, please monitor your students' social media, educate them. I know that the students here, I'm sure they would like their parents to monitor their social media in high school. I think it would be more than appropriate. But other than that, I would also like to thank, our veterans are coming up. Veterans Day is coming up on Saturday, and thank you to all our military men and women who have served our country proudly. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Enos, and I see no further comments. I do want to thank everyone once again for your public comment, your input, the patience of the board, and especially the patience of our STAR program students this evening. This is probably the longest agenda of the year that you've sat through, and we very much look forward to interacting with you very shortly. Thanks to all, and the next work session is scheduled for Tuesday, November 28th at a time to be determined. And the reorganization of the Board and Finance Corporation meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, November 28th at 5:45 p.m., followed by a 6 o'clock p.m. Board meeting. And if there is nothing else, we will move to adjourn this meeting. Thank you all.